Oh, what's going on, guys? It's Horse Beef here, and I'm bringing you another tier list video today. I want to talk about the greatest rivalries in UFC history, and I don't feel like I need to elaborate much more on that. You guys know exactly what the fuck I'm talking about when I'm talking about rivalries, so I will not insult your intelligence and explain to you what I mean by that. And first up, we have an instant S tier. That is like an Alex Pereira versus Israel Adesanya. It spans across multiple organizations, multiple different sports, and pretty much takes place at the upper echelon of both of these sports. They fought 4 times in total. Alex Pereira won 3, Israel Adesanya won once. Arguably, you could say that Israel Adesanya deserved to win their first meeting, but ultimately it doesn't really matter that much. It was a great rivalry. I do wish that they fought maybe one more time in MMA. Maybe that's still on the cards, because I feel like they need to close out the chapter in MMA, but at the same time, maybe we don't need to see that. Maybe, Alex Pereira being able to move up and winning a title at 205, and Israel Adesanya getting that win over Alex before going on his slide. Maybe we can just leave it as it is and be satisfied with what we got. So, yeah, this one, I don't think I have to get much into this one, dude. It's an S tier rivalry, 100%. Then we get Volkanovski versus Max Holloway, and I'm going to stick it at D tier, because this isn't really much of a rivalry at all. It's Max Holloway getting the fucking brakes beat off him, pretty much. Aside from the second fight, I know the second fight was relatively close, and some people would argue that Max should have been given that decision, although I would probably disagree, because I think Volk definitely won rounds 3, 4, and 5 in their second encounter, and I think Volkanovski dog-walked him in that third fight. I know, and it's one of the best performances of all time, really, when you come down to it. And that first fight, I think Max is given way too much credit for how competitive he was in that fight, quote-unquote, because Volkanovski clearly won it and shut down Max Holloway in that fight. Max didn't have a lot of success in that first meeting. I would recommend rewatching it if you think that it was a genuinely close fight and Max could have been given the decision, because no. So for me, this isn't really much of a rivalry. It's Max Holloway getting hyped up in Volkanovski's face before losing every single time. So no, it's not really much of a rivalry to me. So it's D. It's just a one-sided rivalry from the perspective of Max Holloway. And then we get Frank Mir and Brock Lesnar. We had some fun little moments on the mic. I believe Brock Lesnar fought Frank Mir in his debut, or it could have been his second fight in the UFC, and I believe met him once again at UFC 100, which is where he finally beat Frank Mir. And yeah, the fun trash talk between the two of them. Frank Mir being a bit of a trash talker himself, underrated in that department. He was always, I would say, more of like a Dominic Cruz type trash talker, where it's very, very matter of fact, and he did get under the skin of Brock Lesnar. And these two just had a really great back and forth, couple good fights under the belt as well. So yeah, man, I like this rivalry quite a bit. I'm gonna put it at B tier. Then we get Chuck Liddell versus Tito Ortiz. These two essentially carried the UFC on their back simultaneously at one point between the two of them. Like the fact that the Iceman would wear the ice shorts, and then you had Tito Ortiz who'd wear the fire on his shorts. Like, these two were the polar opposites. They were meant to fight each other, and this is just such an iconic rivalry that for me it has to go in S tier. This rivalry right here fed families and carried the UFC at a point, right? There's a reason why Dana White is so fond of someone like Chuck Liddell, is because he essentially carried the sport. Tito is involved in that as well, but Dana fucking hates Tito. Let's move on to the next one. Here we get Jedrzejczyk versus Claudia Gadelha. Now, listen, man. Listen, I don't really care about the rivalry, but this moment right here.
Make sure you're gonna be ready. Shut up. Shut up.
Awesome.
Very, very seductive whispering coming from these two ladies. Usually what would precede this type of exchange is some form of scissoring. Unfortunately, we didn't get that. But their rivalry was fun. Their broken English trash talk is always a great time to listen to all throughout The Ultimate Fighter. And yeah, this is an underrated season of Ultimate Fighter as well. I recommend watching it, because honestly, their rivalry made it very much palatable. It was kind of fun. Check it out. But yeah, this one is C tier for me. And it's only C tier because of that moment, because it gave me a boner. And we move on to the next one here. We got Covington versus Masvidal. This one's kind of sick. I like this one because it got real personal. They only fought the one time. It also kind of bled outside of the UFC as well, with Jorge Masvidal being a fucking punk and jumping Colby Covington, sucker punching him outside of a restaurant or some shit. And there was clear bad blood here, and that has to bump it up. I'm going to put it A tier. I know they only fought the one time, but their trash talk, their bad blood was very entertaining to witness. I personally loved their rivalry. I was a big fan and the beef is actually real. So yeah, it's as simple as that, right? So many rivalries are based on just fabrications. These two genuinely hated each other, and you could feel that. Just watch the press conference before their fight, man. That shit was volatile. Like one of the most like awkwardly brutal press conferences I've ever witnessed. Like just two men that clearly have disdain for one another. Fantastic rivalry. Then we get Conor McGregor versus Khabib Nurmagomedov. This one I think would go S tier as well. Like the only fight they had was the one time when Khabib choked him out. But the build up to that fight is something that I can never forget as a fight fan. The night of the fight itself, the rivalry was brilliant. You know, it got very volatile, especially because of Conor McGregor bringing religion into it, insulting Khabib's wife. You know, he just made things very personal. And on the night of the fight, it didn't get any better. In fact, it probably, you know, became the worst that it had ever been up to that point. It reached its boiling point at the end of the fight. Dylan Dennis getting involved, Khabib leaping out of the octagon like a fucking bird. Yeah, man, this rivalry is unmistakable. It's one of the greatest of all time. This fight build up alone, like, they only have to fight the one time, and the fact that their rivalry has carried over to this day and galvanized fans and essentially created like some kind of a holy war between fans, which I think is stupid as all hell. But hey, this fight almost like created that in a way. So yeah, it has to be recognized as an S tier rivalry 100%. Then we get Rampage Jackson and Wanderlei Silva, a bit of an OG rivalry right here. It was more of a competitive rivalry than anything else. They didn't really talk a whole lot of shit, but they did fight a bunch of times. And there was very much a competitive rivalry between the two of them. I think Wanderlei bested Rampage the two times they fought in Pride, and then Rampage got his revenge back. I think, you know, a nice little counter left hook, I believe, on the chin of Wanderlei Silva, put him out cold and finally got that one back. Yeah, it's more of a competitive rivalry, but these two are legends. So I'm gonna put it at B tier. It's not quite A, only because there wasn't like that genuine hatred between the two of them, but it was a competitive one nonetheless, and just fun to watch. Fun to watch these two go at it, really. And then we get Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz. This one I'll put at A tier. I'll put it at A tier because, I don't know, it seemed like it was a bit for promotional purposes. Conor McGregor never seemed to have any sort of disdain for Nate. Same thing with Nate for Conor. Like, they seemed to have this mutual respect for one another, which did make the build-up, you know, pretty much in good fun. It didn't really delve into the realms of getting too personal, but both of their fights were awesome. They were both events. And the trash talk was fun. Like, all the build-up, fucking talking about animal balloons with the left hand, yeah, or whatever the fuck he said to Nate Diaz, and the fucking one-on-one sit-down interview on the Money Channel or whatever with Nate Diaz and his little moments. What is this, the Money Channel? And like,
I don't know.
Say it like it is, Nate. William up.
Who gives a
Say
Is the Money Channel? Who the gives a shit?
you know, he can only count to 5, and fucking Nate comes back with 10. Listen, iconic moments, some of the funniest moments in the history of MMA came out of the rivalry between these two. So it's A tier for me. Then we get Dominic Cruz versus Uriah Faber. I think it's an A tier one as well. It's a classic. It was essentially Dominic Cruz versus all of Team Alpha Male, but it started with Dominic Cruz versus Uriah Faber. And yeah, it's just very iconic. I recommend watching some kind of a documentary about Dominic Cruz versus Team Alpha Male. It's very, very interesting. The beef, you know, goes back quite a while, and it's just an interesting story overall. One of the more interesting rivalries in MMA. Watch, I believe Mixed Molly Wappery posted a very, very compelling one about that rivalry. So I recommend looking that one up there. Move on to the next one here. Dan Henderson versus Michael Bisping. I don't know about this one. I think it might even be like a C tier rivalry because Dan Henderson, he was already an old man at that point, starched Michael Bisping in one of the most brutal fashions we've ever seen. Like, crazy knockout, one of the greatest of all time. Michael Bisping held on to that. I believe started accusing Dan Henderson of being on this and that, and wins the title off of Luke Rockhold. And rather than defending against a rightful challenger, he decides that he wants his first title defense to be against I believe 46 at the time, Dan Henderson, talking all this shit. Dan Henderson's just there. He's chill. He's a fucking beast. Like, Dan Henderson's one of my favorite fighters of all time. He really is. I love that dude. He represents everything that a fighter should represent. Just the perfect stand-up individual. And even if he was on TRT, the man was in his fucking 40s. You know, like, I get it. It's technically cheating, but I'm not too sure that Dan Henderson ever faced any sort of consequences or popped for anything in the UFC. I could be wrong, though. Please correct me if I'm wrong there. But the beef just kind of seemed like it was coming from a place of just complete bitterness from Bisping, and he arguably deserved to lose in their fucking rematch anyway. Like, arguably, Dan Henderson should have had a belt wrapped around his waist at the age of 46. So, yeah, like I said with Volkanovski and Max Holloway, very much a one-sided rivalry. Dan Henderson didn't seem to give a fuck. The man just liked to fight, and he was just along for the ride. Let's move on to the next one, though. Cody Garbrandt and TJ Dillashaw. Very volatile, very real. Two men that hated each other. You know, the Ultimate Fighter season, the trash talk from both ends. You know, TJ Dillashaw got completely eviscerated by Dominic Cruz, and then felt like he was Dominic standing in front of a guy as dim-witted as Cody Garbrandt. So it was fun to see them both go at each other in their half-witted ways. Yeah, it was good. The build-up to both of their fights was fantastic. Where did I put it? It's definitely not a D-tier rivalry. That's 100% sure. Yeah, I'm gonna put it at A tier. I think it makes all the sense in the world to put these two beside each other, because two fighters who had beef with Team Alpha Male. TJ, a former Team Alpha Male star, and yeah, man, their beef went back a long time. It was very much real and had a lot to do with TJ's behavior inside the ring, or inside the cage, inside the gym as well. Sparring, I believe, apparently ended Chris Holdsworth's career in general. So yeah, there's a lot to look into with that rivalry. It's very, very deep, and yeah, it's fucking fantastic, man. I loved being a witness to it. It was great. And we move on to Dustin Poirier versus Conor McGregor. Now, I'm not too sure about this one. The rivalry itself is weird. Yeah, Conor McGregor beat Dustin Poirier at featherweight, knocked him out. Like, the trash talk and all that was fun, but it was very much like forced, alcoholic, cokehead Conor McGregor trash talk, just nonsense. Changed up his personality between their second and third fight. It was just very weird, and it felt forced from Conor McGregor. Like, it felt forced for him to come into that second fight being the humble, nice guy, perform pretty well, gets knocked out, and then decides he wants to start hating on Dustin Poirier, calling him an asshole, and fucking going at him for his charity and all that shit. And it was just weird. It felt very forced to me, but it did provide entertainment, and it provided shit like this.
Your wife is in me DMs, hey baby. Fuck him.
You know, your wife is in me DMs, you know, stuff like that. Awesome moments. But the beef itself, I think, was a little bit manufactured from Conor's perspective. It seemed like Dustin Poirier was just annoyed with him the whole time. But that's about it. Yeah, I don't know. For me, it's a B tier one. GSP versus Josh Koscheck rivalry. It pretty much stems from Josh Koscheck just being a fucking prick. Entertaining prick at that. I always enjoyed rooting against him. But GSP delivered a fantastic speech.
Montreal, it's true. I'm in Montreal, you know, but I'm at my best when I'm fighting in my hometown. But also, if I win against Josh Koscheck, when I'm going to beat him, it's going to be the end of it. It's going to be 2 times that I beat him. And if he has the same mentality as me, Josh Koscheck going to have to reconsider the career. Because if he wants to be the best, now he's going to lose 2 times to me. It's going to take a long time again before he go to the title, or maybe never again. So he's going to have to claim up the ladder a long time. So I'm going to beat him Saturday night, and it's going to be the end of it. I'm not going to talk about him for a long, long time. And I am going to feel very happy.
And then proceeded to beat the brakes off of Josh Koscheck, beat him 2 times. Yeah, it was really just a one-sided rivalry like Max Holloway versus Volkanovski. So for me, it stands at D tier, and we get GSP versus Matt Hughes, much more of a competitive rivalry more than anything, but we did get the rare trash talk from GSP. I am not impressed by your performance, you know, shit like that. You know what? I'm gonna put it at C tier just because it was more of a competitive rivalry at the very least, and it did deliver that "I'm not impressed by your performance" line, which is iconic. So, yeah, C tier. It gets bumped up a little bit for that alone. Then we get Robert Whitaker versus Israel Adesanya, another manufactured bullshit rivalry. Robert Whitaker just wanted to fight the guy, and Izzy starts making it about identity and, you know, you a fake Maori and all this shit because. Of course, the guy with 20 different identities is obsessed about identity at all times. I honestly never really cared for the rivalry, if I'm being real. The first fight was very definitive. Great performance from Izzy. Second fight arguably could have gone Rob's way, but I don't know. The fight itself is just a write-off. And, yeah, man, for me... Yeah, it's D tier. I never really cared for it. It was just completely manufactured by Israel Adesanya, and yeah, he brought all types of bullshit into it. Never really cared for the rivalry. To be honest, I just liked watching them fight each other because I enjoyed watching these two fight. And then we get Daniel Cormier and John Jones, and we're not going to speak much more about this one. Some of the craziest moments, their little scrap pre-fight, man. Hey, pussy, you still there?
Hey, are you still there?
I'm here. So, John, do you think I'm just going to sit there and let you kill me, John? I mean, really.
Just awesome moments. And this is, I'm just going to say it, it's the best rivalry for me in combat sports history. The hatred, the vitriol between these two, you could feel it. You could feel it through the screen. You absolutely could. Dude, nah. This rivalry is unequivocally the best of all time. And I know I don't usually rank tiers against each other, but I'm going to put it ahead of the pack because you simply cannot top how legendary this rivalry was. Then we get Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington. Dude, these two had really good scraps, so that kind of bumps up their rivalry a bit because it wasn't really one-sided. I just burped. Even though Kamaru Usman won both fights, Colby Covington was probably up on the cards in their first fight before the, I would say, early stoppage. Like, I'm not going to say that Kamaru didn't deserve to win the fight or anything, or that it was some bullshit stoppage and Mark Goddard saved Kamaru. No, because Colby Covington's jaw was broken. He was getting his head pinged around, and he was getting hurt clearly in that 5th round. He was just not in great shape. But their second fight, Kamaru Usman wins those two rounds. You could probably give him a 10-8 in there as well. But then Colby Covington, I think, wins round 3, 4, and 5 in that fight and could have done enough to even it out. I don't know. I think the fact that Kamaru Usman is such a great and Colby Covington, he just rose to the occasion every time they fought. The trash talk leading up, the fact that they both just resigned themselves to boxing matches essentially. And yeah, this is one of those cases where two guys hated each other and they fought each other as if they hated each other, and that's fantastic, and that propels this. And a polar opposite fucking rivalry to Manel Kape and Muhammad Mokaev. You think they want to kill each other, they're sucker punching each other in gyms and all that, giving each other cuts and trying to square it before the fucking first bell even rings. And then when they start fighting, you got Muhammad Mokaev getting Manel to the ground, and rather than trying to finish him, he's trying to fucking pull down his pants and give him a little rimmy. Listen, I don't understand that rivalry, and in fact, I don't want to speak about it ever again because it was a bunch of nonsense. But let's move on to the next one. Here we got Royce Gracie and Ken Shamrock, bro. Oh man, this is a classic right here. Absolute legends, both of them. Even though I'm not a huge fan of the Gracie family, Royce Gracie is still an OG of this game. Same goes for Ken Shamrock. I believe they both have wins over one another, and it was more of a competitive rivalry than anything. But Ken Shamrock does have some choice words, or did have some choice words for Royce Gracie. He wasn't a huge fan of how maybe the rules were favorable to Royce Gracie and his style, which is definitely an argument that you could use to go against a lot of Royce Gracie's wins. But at the end of the day, man, these two legends of the game, fighters through and through. Like, even though combat sports, MMA in particular, has evolved so much since these two. Like, if you go and you watch like any undercard fight, and it's infinitely higher level than this. But the fact that these two are such legends, and they were just such competitors with each other. And yeah, I love this rivalry. A tier for that one. Deiveson Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno. This one is good because of the fights, because these two were clearly born to fight each other. I can't think of two men who just consistently put on such great fights against one another. These two were immune to dropping boring fights, like, let alone when they're not fighting one another, just any of their fights. But when these two came together, it was just a perfect clash. And in the end, Moreno got the better of it. I love the fact that it was one win for each, a draw going into the 4th fight, and then Moreno won the 4th fight very convincingly. Yeah, man, the trash talk, it was weird. It was inconsistent. Like, they were all respectful to each other. And then you have Figueiredo coming in, I think before their 4th fight, talking shit. Or was their 3rd fight talking shit, like, you cry, baby. Just weird trash talk like that. I don't know. The rivalry itself was whatever. It kind of seemed manufactured from Figueiredo's perspective. But the fights themselves were great. But yeah, the rivalry, I don't know, man. The fact that they did go on to go up against each other for four separate fights, I think is pretty cool. Maybe propels it. So yeah, I'm gonna put that beats here, man. These guys went to war 4 times, and can't believe that shit. Then we get Rampage Jackson and Rashad Evans. Now this clip right here says everything that we need to say about this rivalry.
Back up, dude. Back up, dude.
Dude, I know you just didn't do that.
Yes, I did.
I know you just didn't do
Yes,
that.
I did.
Dude,
You know I did.
you came my face.
So what? Throw it, baby. Throw it. Let it happen.
Pure comedy. And by the way, that season of The Ultimate Fighter, I know I keep talking about The Ultimate Fighter. Watch this season. This is the greatest season of Ultimate Fighter, one of the greatest seasons of reality television you will ever watch. So for that reason, S tier. S tier. That rivalry was pure comedy. Pure comedy. Then we have Ronda Rousey versus Miesha Tate. Don't care at all for this rivalry, and the reason why I don't care is because it was all manufactured by Ronda Rousey. A whole bunch of mean mugging. She won the fights at the end of the day against Miesha Tate. I think they fought twice or whatever. I honestly don't really give a shit, but it was a rivalry that I had to include here. And their season of Ultimate Fighter was kind of fun, but it was all just Ronda Rousey being a bitch, to be honest, and Miesha Tate kind of just smiling it off, and I don't know, didn't really care for it, to be honest. Then we get Anderson Silva versus Chael Sonnen, dude. Chael P. This was a cool rivalry, like from the call-outs from Chael Sonnen on Anderson Silva, the crowd reactions from Anderson Silva, the way the fights went down, the first fight, the way Chael Sonnen was just beating him around the octagon, and then Anderson locks in that last-second submission. Like, the fights themselves were very eventful, but yeah, it was pretty much just Anderson Silva sitting there with a translator translating all of Chael Sonnen's trash talk in his ear. Anderson saying nothing, giving him really nothing back. So it was more of a competitive rivalry from the perspective of Anderson Silva. But the way that Chael Sonnen sold these fights, because really, when it comes down to it, the fact that Chael Sonnen has fights against John Jones and Anderson Silva, two of the greatest fighters of all time, just shows how fucking slick he was with his trash talk. Because there's no universe where Chael Sonnen should have even been in the octagon with Anderson Silva in the first place, but the fact that he did so well in that first fight and proved a lot of people wrong was interesting. But yeah, it was very much one-sided, but so comical that, dude, B tier for that one, for me at least. Then we get Tito Ortiz versus Ken Shamrock. Of course we get I'll beat you into the living death.
I hope to God you come ready, because if you don't, I'm going to beat you into the living death.
Fantastic line from Ken Shamrock. This amazing moment, of course, I will always bring up at any chance I get, where he kicks the chair up after Tito's laugh, and fucking Dana White catches the chair, and just like what an interesting situation it is to witness Tito Ortiz getting the better of the war of the words. Like, Ken Shamrock really made Tito look like Conor McGregor, like a prime Conor McGregor or Chael Sonnen around this time. Interesting rivalry to say the least. It's a classic, but Tito Ortiz ultimately finished Ken Shamrock all 3 times they fought, so it's not really much of a rivalry, but he did threaten to beat Tito into the living death. So this, for me, has to go at C tier, no lower than that. But that does conclude my thoughts. Please let me know in the comment section below where you would rank these rivalries, which ones I left out. Maybe I forgot some, because I do tend to forget some when I do tier lists like this, and some have to be left out, just in the interest of time and not having these videos go past like the fucking hour mark, which they very well could with all these tier lists. But if you guys like that, if you like the super long form shit, then please let me know. But yeah, as I said, guys, thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.